Hello and welcome to Blue Lives TV on the America Out Loud TV network. I'm your host, Randy Sutton. Thanks so much for joining us. You know, I want to tell you just a little bit about Blue Lives Matter, the largest police support grassroots organization in the country. You need to check us out at bluelivesmatter.blue. It's all the news about all law enforcement. We have more than 1.4 million followers on Facebook. Check us out over there. You know, it was inevitable. The attacks on police officers being purposefully targeted for assassination. Just as ISIS and other terrorist organizations have called for the lone wolf attacks against America, the hate-filled organizers of protest groups across America have chanted their vile threats and calls to attack law enforcement. They have gotten their wish, and cops throughout the nation almost perpetually drape their badges in mourning. Every police officer in the nation who has been following the events in Ferguson, Missouri, New York City, Cleveland, Ohio, understands that there, but for the grace of God, go I. Every time a man or woman who has sworn the oath to protect and serve goes out on patrol, they are in harm's way and may be called upon to protect themselves, a citizen, or another cop. The use of force is not an if, but a when. And when that moment comes, as it inevitably will, the possibility for it to go horribly wrong is always present. Split-second choices may have never-ending consequences, and there is absolutely no possible way to write a procedure or create a technique that will successfully manage physical violence. This is one reality of the streets. And another is that every law enforcement officer has not only a right to survive, they have a duty to survive. They owe that duty to themselves, those that love them, and their communities. And if that means that they must kill in order to preserve their life and their safety, then that is the harsh reality that must be brought into the light of day, instead of this politically correct sound bites that have been resulted in the wake of recent deaths at the hands of law enforcement. Now, during a recent interview, the mother of Eric Garner, who died while being arrested by the New York City Police Department, made a speech. In it, she said she called the death of her son a thrill kill for the police. Now, the media, they adored that phrase, and they played it over and over repeatedly in their quest to fan flames and garner ratings. The inconvenient truth is that when cops kill, it is often their lives that are altered forever, even when the use of deadly force is purposefully used. But when the death is accidental and results from a physical altercation where the intent was simply to take a suspect into custody, then the psychological and the emotional consequences can be devastating. Let me be really clear here. No cop wants to kill, but every cop must be prepared to kill, because the men and women who have chosen law enforcement as a career are human and not automatons. Each will bring their unique perspective to the job. After spending 34 years as a police officer, I think I know a little bit about security and about keeping people safe. And there is one security company that stands above all the others. It's JSD Protective Services. Now, this is not your rent-a-cop, okay? This is 21st century security at its best. They're nationwide. They do everything. They do executive protection. They do armed security. They do detective work. They do even law enforcement functions. And here's what sets them apart: their training. Their training in security is second to none. I have been very, very impressed with their entire program. If you are have a need for security, JSD Protective Services, check them out. They're the best. The very diversity that police agencies seek out and encourage within their ranks also plays a role in how and when use of force decisions are made. For instance, a street-smart officer who grew up in the inner city and had to use physicality growing up to protect themselves will assess danger differently than a person who grew up in a rural community and never had a fight in their life. Although their training in the academy may be identical, they will perceive threats and responses to those threats very differently. Therefore, there can be no uniformity. Now, training is key to accomplish the police mission, and it is most critical when it comes to the use of force. It is because of training and technology that the number of officers murdered in the line of duty diminished since the 60s and 70s, from in the hundreds to double digits today. The blood of police officers was running in the streets, and the police profession realized that to protect the officers, serious changes needed to be made. The need for officer survival training is critical, and unfortunately, continuing education and proficiency in all areas of law enforcement is often lacking depending on the agency philosophy and budget. Now, if the federal government truly wanted to make positive efforts to improve American law enforcement, it would be to provide resources in terms of money and developing advanced training courses to be made available to officers around the country. The technology in shoot, don't shoot training scenarios has improved dramatically, yet it's so expensive that few officers around the country will ever even gain access to it. This is unfair to the citizens in communities across the country, as well as to the officers who protect them. Instead of discussing those kind of issues, which would be positive for law enforcement, we've heard how important it is to equip the police with body cameras. Now, while I believe that body cameras could prove to be beneficial, it should not be portrayed as a method to protect the public from the police, which is how everyone, from the former President of the United States to the talking heads on news stations across America, has presented it. In fact, it is the police themselves that need the protection from those that make false claims of brutality, sexual misconduct, and discourtesy against them. They would probably benefit more. Now, here's the out loud truth. Of this, there is no doubt. The intensity and passion of those thousands of men and women around the country who have been participating in protests and unrest reveals that there are huge issues of misunderstanding and distrust that are dividing the American law enforcement officer from the people that they serve. Now, this is a tragedy. It is made especially tragic because the reality is that the vast majority of men and women who have chosen the profession of law enforcement have dedicated themselves to the communities that they serve and they protect. Countless acts of bravery, kindness, compassion, and empathy take place each and every day in small rural communities to the largest of cities. Now, the perfect illustration is the San Diego police officer who, days after returning from serving his country as a Marine, came back to his patrol duties and was captured on video meeting a young child in a restaurant who didn't have enough money to pay for his meal. On the video, the officer touched the boy's life by showing his kindness when he paid for the child's meal. Minutes later, he was gunned down in a random attack simply because he was a cop. This is the reality, not the accusations that cops are racist thugs hunting down innocent children. And yet, it is those lies being perpetuated by agenda-driven hate mongers that drive the national narrative. Every law enforcement officer has a right to be proud of themselves and the men and women who stand beside them in their fight for justice, just as they have the right and the duty to survive.